So here's the thing. I 100% think that this gentleman should have some type of consideration when it comes to his rent payment due to the fact that he ran into a challenge of not being able to pay his rent. With that said, the property management company technically doesn't care, right? The property management company is hired to do a particular job or a set of jobs, and one of those jobs is collecting rent. And so when you sign a lease as a tenant, you are agreeing that if you don't pay your rent on time, no matter what the circumstance is, you face the chances of getting evicted. And it is extremely clear as day, cut and dry in the lease agreement, which in turn allows for the management company and the property owner to do what they ended up doing to this gentleman. So the government shutdown is officially over, right? Shout out to the government for figuring something out, because we had a lot of Americans that were counting on them figuring something out so they can get back to work. In this next story, there is this federal worker that wasn't able to pay their rent. They stayed in this facility for 10 plus years, paid on time. However, they ran into some hard times, and unfortunately, the property manager did not grant this individual any extra time to catch up on their rent. And so they officially started the eviction process on this gentleman that has lived here for 10 plus years, which I think is unfair. However, the challenge that we as landlords have is when you hire a property manager, they have a job to do. With that said, let's check out this video.
I give respect and I expect respect back.
Francisco Isern tells me for the first time in his 10 years living in this West Palm Beach apartment building, he missed a rent payment.
This apartment building has hundreds of tenants, and so the property manager probably manages not only this site, but multiple sites. Let's also imagine that this property owner, who the property manager works for, may also have other properties as well. So we'll keep that in mind as we watch this video.
I think I have a fair reason why I'm not, it's out of my control.
As the federal government shutdown stretched from October into November, the VA employee sent this letter to the company that owns his building, letting them know he's a federal worker going without pay, asking for extra time to pay his rent.
He's been here for 10 years, and it sounds like he's paid his rent, on time every month up until now.
Asking for extra time to pay his rent as soon as he gets back pay. No response until this text arrived Wednesday. Good morning, Francisco. Eviction has been filed. The management company is now asking for late fees and legal fees on top of November's rent.
They should be ashamed of what they're doing.
So here's the thing. I 100% think that this gentleman should have some type of consideration when it comes to his rent payment due to the fact that he ran into a challenge of not being able to pay his rent. With that said, the property management company technically doesn't care, right? The property management company is hired to do a particular job or a set of jobs, and one of those jobs is collecting rent. And so when you sign a lease as a tenant, you are agreeing that if you don't pay your rent on time, no matter what the circumstance is, you face the chances of getting evicted. And it is extremely clear as day, cut and dry in the lease agreement, which in turn allows for the management company and the property owner to do what they ended up doing to this gentleman. And it's unfortunate because as a property owner, we need that rent payment in order to cover our debt service. And if we don't get paid, we have to be very strict with regard to how we approach the tenants in order for us to protect ourselves and our investment. With this said, I think the property manager should have reached out to the owner and let them know that this is a person that has a really good track record of paying their rent. And we know that he works for the government because he submitted his pay stubs when he initially signed up for this apartment complex. And so is there a way that we can give this individual a break in order to make sure we don't kick somebody out that is a good tenant that has been paying on time and is just running into a scenario that he's not in turn able to pay yet due to the government shutdown. And so I think that's where the property manager could have done better. But I also, as a landlord, understand the stance that the property manager has taken. And this is also why, whenever you look at a property management entity in terms of their Google ratings, it's usually at like a 1 or a 2, because most people who are adding their ratings for a property management entity are individuals that were potentially kicked out or evicted of their space or their apartment complex, and they in turn have no other way to vent their feelings toward this organization. And so there you have it. You typically have a pretty low rating for property management companies.
Francisco says the more than $600 in fees are the least of his worries.
It's a serious business. You put eviction notice on my record. What are my chances of either getting lease under my name after this?
Well, first of all, it's a travesty.
Patrick Franklin is the president and CEO of the Urban League of Palm Beach County.
I wish we had the funds to help him or her in their situation, but our funds, a lot of our funds for emergency relief are tied to government funding. So we don't have the funds to do that.
He says the organization has spoken with multiple federal workers unable to cover their bills during the shutdown.
Tax-paying Americans here in this country that are being affected all the way down the line, and for us not to have that knowledge or to feel that, shame on us.
I tried repeatedly to reach the property management company.
Hello, is anybody there?
But couldn't get through.
I think
Now that's a problem. If you're calling the property management company and they're not responding to your calls, because this could be a tenant, right? This could be a tenant that has an issue. The dryer isn't working, or the fan in the bathroom is smoking, or there's a leak coming from the ceiling of the bathroom above us. And if your property management entity is not answering the phone, that could be an issue. As a landlord, as a property owner, I would look at that and I would be concerned.
they are being unfair.
With the end of the shutdown and an oversized paycheck on the horizon, Francisco is vowing to fight to get that eviction filing off his record.
My name, my reputation is on the line, and they're threatening my reputation right now.
So once again, I think it's unfortunate that this individual is running into a scenario where he now needs to go through the eviction process, and they potentially may kick him out of his unit. However, as a property owner who works with a property manager, back to the point of the property manager having a job to do, and if I were to get a phone call for every tenant that is not able to pay their rent, that would drive me as a property owner insane. And so the property manager is forced to make a determination. And in this scenario, from their vantage point, it's a simple one. They have a process in place. Once a tenant gets behind on their rent up to a certain point, they start the eviction process in order to get that tenant out and in order to turn the apartment unit over to potentially another tenant that can pay. You know, it's a business, and in some scenarios it can get ugly. And in this format, for this tenant that has been there for 10 plus years, it looks like it kind of flipped pretty quickly. But I do hope that, you know, they figure something out and maybe allow for him to stay at that unit for a little bit longer. I would assume that after this experience, this tenant, regardless of the outcome, so let's say if they do allow for him to stay in that unit, he's probably getting the heck out of there once his lease is up. Let me know your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next video.